He smelt like burned diesel and ambition. They reeked of cologne and entitlement. Watch closely. What happens when the dirtiest man in the room buys $5 million worth of equipment, all with cold, hard cash? In this story, we peel back the layers of prejudice, revealing the shocking secret behind one man's massive, silent success and the instantaneous regret of those who judged him. The air inside the New Holland dealership was expensive, crisp, cold, filtered. Every surface mirrored the unforgiving fluorescent light. This was a church of chrome, an enormous Maschinensta-heavy armor of modern agriculture. Then the entrance door hissed open. Enter the contradiction. Jake wasn't just dirty, he was soaked. Engine grease coated his knuckles like black gloves. His denim jumpsuit was permanently stained, a map of every brutal repair he had ever fought. He tracked a thin, dark line across the flawless white tile. The chatter died. Silence is heavy. Every head turned. The sales staff's sharp suits and tighter smiles froze. A woman in pearls and designer boots actually recoiled, subtly pulling her purse closer. They didn't see a potential client. They saw an oil spill. Jake didn't flinch under the scrutiny. His eyes tired, but intensely focused, scanned the massive yellow combines displayed like trophies. He stopped at the polished counter. His voice, rough as low-grade sandpaper, cut through the silence. I need 5 of those. Certificado de registro 10S. Load them up. The head salesman, Gary, managed a patronizing smile. Sir, perhaps the service entrance is ... Jake cut him off. He reached into his pocket. Not a wallet, a thick brown paper bag, heavy enough to dent the counter. Cash, Jake stated. 5 units. I pay now. The silence broke, not with shock, but with immediate, unrestrained laughter. Gary's high, brittle laugh was joined by the booming guffaws of the refined 5 patrons. Combines. Gosh, who was this clown? They believed the joke was entirely on Jake. They had no idea the joke was about to cost them everything. The laughter was a physical thing. A cruel wall of sound bouncing off the polished chrome and the massive glass windows of the showroom. Gary, the head salesman, pressed his hands dramatically onto the counter, leaning in close enough for Jake to smell his expensive, cloying cologne. 5 combines. Cash. Oh, this is rich, Gary wheezed, wiping a theatrical tear of mirth from his eye. He didn't see the money bag. He saw only the relentless grime on Jake's worn leather jacket, the deep creases of black oil etched permanently into his knuckles. Gary smoothed his perfect silk tie, a slow, deliberate gesture. Deliberate. It wasn't just ridicule. Jake didn't even class warfare. His silence was a growing wall of concrete. He gave Gary absolutely nothing to work with. Look at him, people, Gary announced, turning to the small group of well-dressed onlookers, effectively making Jake the public center of their amusement. He looks like he personally wrestled a diesel engine and decisively lost. Did you stumble in here looking for the scrapyard, buddy? Because this is a high-end facility. We sell implements that cost more than your entire lifetime of savings. Assuming you save diligently. A woman with impossibly large diamond earrings let out a high, affected shriek of laughter, covering her mouth with a manicured hand. The core absurdity of this situation, to them, was Jake's belief that his filthy hands held the keys to their exclusive, immaculate world. But beneath the layers of grease and weariness, Jake's eyes held a steady, unwavering focus that none of them bothered to truly look into. They missed the critical calculation happening behind those weary pupils. Gary quickly decided this had to be a pathetic attempt at a viral stunt, or perhaps just a drunkard disrupting serious business on a slow afternoon. Tell you what, grease monkey, Gary continued, his voice dropping slightly, trying to sound authoritative. and intimidating in a way he hadn't earned. I appreciate the performance. Truly, the dedication to the raw authenticity of those oil stains is phenomenal, deserving of an award, but we have actual serious buyers today. People who respect the value of time. Did your little band of merry pranksters put you up to this? Is there a hidden camera somewhere recording our collective embarrassment? He glanced around nervously, genuinely checking the chandeliers for lenses. Jake just pushed the heavy bag another inch forward, the rough paper scraping the marble countertop, making a dull, abrasive sound that somehow managed to feel louder and more real than all the laughter combined. He hadn't spoken since his initial demanding statement, and that intense, focused silence was starting to feel undeniably dangerous. This isn't a joke. Jake finally grated the sound, startling the nearby patrons. His voice was quiet, raw, but it carried the concentrated weight of metal striking brittle stone. Gary laughed again immediately, even louder this time, desperately trying to drown out the sudden, uncomfortable seriousness. Of course, it's a joke. You think we haven't seen this sad routine before? I'm secretly a mysterious millionaire trope. Listen closely, son. If you don't leave quietly now and stop monopolizing my counter space, I'm going to have security physically escort you to the back lot where you can probably afford one lonely, rusty lug nut. And trust me completely, you absolutely do not want that kind of scene captured on your permanent record. He gestured dismissively toward the entrance, indicating the wide glass doors. The other salespeople were finally starting to look genuinely uncomfortable, sensing the sharp, distinct shift in Jake's demeanor, a powerful, physical stillness that suggested tightly coiled fury. They were paid handsomely to read clients, and this man was registering serious wealth and seriousness off the charts. Gary, however, was determined to finalize the humiliation by tearing apart the specifics of the order. And *5 CR tins. You clearly haven't done your homework and don't know what you're asking for in this highly technical market. Those are massive, custom-built, top-tier harvesters, the pride of the entire industry. We don't just load them up like sacks of animal feed for quick delivery. There are complex financing details, comprehensive maintenance contracts, specific operational requirements that must be approved. It normally takes weeks of meticulous paperwork and due diligence. And you think you can just show up looking like you crawled out of a sewer grate and demand them instantly for cash? Gary spat the last word out like a genuine curse, the ultimate low-class payment method. You need a credit check that requires a blood sample and a biopsy of your savings, not a cheap, brown lunch bag full of loose bills. Jake's lips twitched slightly, a subtle micro-expression that suggested profound pity, not any trace of anger. He wasn't insulted by the comment about credit. He was deeply insulted by Gary's profound, obvious ignorance of true, immediate, liquid wealth. Jake totally ignored the flowery, unnecessary explanation of complex financing protocols. He reached slowly into the deep pocket of his oily trousers, pulling out a standard, folded business envelope. The paper, slightly crumpled, but otherwise immaculate. He placed it carefully and squarely on the counter beside the heavy cash bag. Remarkably, it wasn't greasy, somehow managing to stay pristine despite its close proximity to Jake's working hands. The full specifications are inside, Jake said simply, his voice returning to that low, rough grit, including the customized GPS units, the specialized header attachments required for the specific North Dakota soil composition, and the exact delivery window. I need them on-site and fully operational by the strict deadline of the end of the next fiscal quarter. This level of extremely precise professional detail instantly and completely contradicted the image of the drunken, ignorant prankster Gary had been frantically peddling to his audience. This man knew exactly what a CR10 was, what customizations were necessary, and what they would cost. Gary refused to even look down at the envelope. His entire personal identity and professional standing were now wrapped up in the severe judgment he had just publicly delivered. To acknowledge the contents would be to admit he might be catastrophically wrong. And Gary absolutely could not afford that kind of vulnerability in front of his potential high roller audience. "Oh, now we have props," Gary laughed loudly, waving a dismissive hand at the envelope as if swatting a fly. "A little note. Maybe it tells us where the hidden camera is finally located. Look, I'm genuinely done with this ridiculous charade." "Security!" Gary yelled, clapping his hands together sharply, the sound echoing in the high ceiling. "Get this disruptive tramp out of my showroom immediately and dispose of him." The security guard, a large, burly man named Mitch, who had seen 1,000 petty workplace disputes, started moving reluctantly toward the counter, his brow furrowed with confusion and concern. Mitch had a terrible gut feeling this was about to go extremely sideways, extremely fast. Before Mitch could manage to reach them, Jake tapped the paper bag once with his index finger. A small, concise, weighty sound. The 5 combines, fully customized, cost approximately $3.5 million, Jake stated clearly and plainly, letting the terrifying figure hang suspended in the silent air. In this specific bag, there is $3.7 million, accounting generously for immediate sales taxes, transport fees, and unexpected handling costs. Everything is entirely prepaid in cash, the sheer volume of the currency. The concept of paying for agricultural machinery in rough, small denomination bills was nearly comical. Yet the total sum was undeniably and catastrophically real. The wealthy clientele immediately stopped giggling. $3.5 million was serious money, even for them. They began to look at Gary with a sharp mixture of growing annoyance and dawning comprehension. Was Gary actually about to successfully turn away a guaranteed, immediate, non-refundable sale over a pair of stained pants? Gary was already too far gone in his self-righteous snobbery to correctly process the sheer magnitude of the numbers. He was focused solely and obsessively on the offensive oil stains and the cheap brown paper bag. "I do not care if you have $3.70 or $3. $7 million, sir. You are physically dirty. You are actively disruptive, and you are not conducting yourself in a professional manner in a serious business environment," Gary spat, pushing the bag roughly back toward Jake with the very tip of his polished leather shoe, refusing absolutely to touch the soiled paper with his hands. "Take your little sack of monopoly money and leave this facility immediately before I call the actual police for trespassing and property disturbance." This, Jake knew, was the absolute point of no return. The woman in pearls actually gasped audibly, not at Jake's dreadful appearance, but purely at Gary's catastrophic, calculated failure of basic customer service. She was quickly calculating the exact size of the commission Gary was deliberately rejecting. Jake finally looked directly into Gary's panicked, arrogant, shrinking eyes. His voice was utterly devoid of emotion, a low, rumbling, inevitable threat. "You know, Gary," Jake said, using his name for the first time, a small, unsettling violation of their assumed anonymity. "I spent the last 48 hours straight wrenching violently on a combine 10 that seized up tragically in the critical middle of a harvest because some idiot, salesperson, perhaps someone like yourself, used the entirely wrong grade of hydraulic fluid. I flew a private jet here directly from the field. I haven't showered. I haven't slept." He paused, allowing Gary full time to absorb the chilling, contradictory phrase, private jet. "I am here," Jake finished, his hand resting flat on the counter beside the purchase order envelope, "confirming its presence because I need 5 new ones. Asterisk. Now, asterisk, I need them immediately operational. And I vastly prefer cash transactions to keep certain sizable holdings entirely off the federal books for legitimate tax purposes." Gary's face instantly went paper-bag white. The laughter was completely and utterly dead, replaced by a deep, hollow pit of silence. The silence returned, now heavier and infinitely more dangerous than before. The sales staff looked like frozen statues, mouths agape in horror. They understood everything now. This was not some ridiculous joke. This was colossal, liquid wealth presented by a working man who valued speed, efficiency, and utility over polished appearances. They had violently ridiculed one of the largest immediate sales their entire dealership had seen this fiscal year, solely and exclusively because of the man's clothes. Jake lifted the heavy paper bag slowly, his tired eyes never once leaving Gary's. He did not retrieve the detailed purchase envelope. "I see this facility is unfortunately not equipped to handle serious, timely business transactions," Jake said, the final calm word feeling like a predetermined death sentence. "Consider this transaction permanently cancelled and recorded as a failure. And consider this a note delivered directly to corporate. I know precisely where else to shop, and trust me, those companies deeply respect the man who actually works for his money, regardless of how he smells." Jake didn't wait for a response. He simply turned, the heavy paper bag containing the cashier's checks, the liquidity for the cancelled transaction, hanging loosely from his calloused fingers. The smell of high-octane fuel and sweat, the scent they had mocked, was his chosen perfume. That pervasive layer of dark, viscous grime covering his hands wasn't merely the byproduct of a long shift. It was a carefully curated protective layer, a history written in iron filings and hydraulic fluid. It was the physical record of decades spent mastering not just engines, but the brutal, unflinching economics of physical labor. He didn't wash it off before coming here because he didn't need to impress them. He needed them to reveal themselves. This calculated insult was the final, critical variable he needed for his next move. They saw dirt, they missed the badge of honor. Each streak of black sludge represented 10,000 hours under a chassis. 10,000 decisions made about where a single penny should be rooted not to consumer comforts, but directly into hard, unyielding assets. Jake's youth wasn't spent on frivolous purchases. It was spent acquiring skills the world would always need, fixing, building, enduring. While others chased credit lines and ephemeral luxuries, Jake chased concrete utility. He lived by the gospel of zero debt, the absolute control of resources, and the understanding that true wealth was invisible and untouchable by the market's whims. His financial discipline was ruthless, rooted in a childhood spent watching essential services falter, cementing his belief that liquidity and control were paramount to survival and profit. His apparent humility was the most expensive tactical mask money could buy. That beat-up pickup truck parked outside wasn't an oversight. It was a deliberate shield designed to invite their condescension. The salesman, focused only on superficial signifiers of success, completely failed to see the land registry records, the geological survey reports, and the mineral rights tucked away in secure digital vaults. Jake didn't invest in stocks that fluctuated on rumor. He invested in things that existed forever and provided essential scarcity. He owned the earth beneath their feet, figuratively and sometimes quite literally. Decades ago, when everyone was rushing toward tech bubbles, Jake was quietly acquiring abandoned industrial plots and critical water rights far outside the city limits, recognizing that infrastructure, not innovation, was the ultimate asset class. The demand for vehicles, those 27 specialized heavy-duty trucks he was prepared to buy in cash, was not a personal whim. It was the necessary logistical expansion for his multi-million-dollar operation centered entirely on infrastructure maintenance and emergency resource deployment, timed perfectly to meet upcoming government contract deadlines. His readiness was less about preparing for a catastrophe and more about capitalizing on predictable scarcity. Jake understood the clockwork mechanism of society, and he knew that when the big system hiccups, the man with the operable equipment, the stored fuel, and the pristine credit standing dictates the price. He was not buying luxury. He was securing operational capacity, calculated precisely to monopolize specific high-demand emergency repair sectors. Jake reached the exit, the heavy glass door parting silently for him, signaling his final departure from their ridiculous orbit. The silence left behind was deafening because Gary, the sales manager, finally grasped the true size of the hole he had just dug. That canceled sale wasn't just 27 trucks. It was the immediate loss of all subsequent maintenance contracts, all specialized parts orders, and the guaranteed future business that comes from a man who runs a high-demand, high-wear fleet. The corporate headquarters, which Jake was already directly contacting, measured efficiency not in polished shoes, but in rapid, clean transaction. Gary's lack of respect had just registered as a colossal failure of institutional competence, a mistake that would immediately trigger a corporate audit and, likely, termination. Jake didn't need to write an email. He needed to make one phone call to a man who understood tonnage, logistics, and the price of wasting time. A CEO whose office was located above a loading dock, not in a skyscraper. His contacts were not found on LinkedIn. They were forged in the crucible of hard contracts, late nights, and the shared realization that profit follows discipline. Within the hour, the competitors' companies whose executives drove modest 7-year-old sedans and whose primary metric was reliability would receive a detailed procurement list. They respected the smell of honest labor because they knew that the man wearing the grease was the one writing the 7-figure checks, the man who understood the machinery down to the last bolt, and, more importantly, understood the fragile supply chains that everyone else took for granted. Gary had judged the cover, but Jake was the entire operating manual. Every decision in Jake's life, from the low-cost materials of his work clothes to the exact placement of his land investments near future infrastructural bottlenecks, had been rigorously optimized for efficiency and minimal exposure. His world was one of mathematical certainty. There was no room for emotion or vanity. He had endured decades of physical discomfort, ignored social ridicule, and maintained a monastic focus on the bottom line. That discipline was why he possessed the ability to shift millions instantaneously. His silence was not lack of retort. It was the sound of a system recalculating its trajectory after filtering out a recognized threat. The true nature of his wealth was less about accumulating money and more about eliminating risk. The sun hit Jake as he stepped onto the asphalt, momentarily illuminating the metallic sheen on his coveralls. He didn't look back at the pale, panicked faces pressed against the glass. He knew the reaction inside was already cascading from confusion to sickening realization. They had confused capability with flash, confusing the man who financed the shiny life with the man who merely sold it. The paper bag, still heavy with the cash equivalent of a small country's annual budget, was tucked casually under his arm. This momentary inconvenience, this necessity of finding a new supplier, was just a minor, pre-anticipated blip in his carefully drawn fiscal map. He was already mentally reviewing the terms offered by the competing company, analyzing which minor concession he would extract due to the speed of the immediate sale. Jake climbed into the cab of his ancient pickup, the worn seat cushion protesting under his weight. He smelled the familiar scent of oil and honest metal, a smell far more comforting than the sterile, synthesized scent of a new showroom. He turned the key. The engine roared, a sound of reliable, heavy power, a stark contrast to the whispered panic now paralyzing the dealership floor. He wasn't mad. He was just moving on to a company that understood the difference between profit and presentation. The failure wasn't his, it was theirs. He pulled onto the main road, the massive transaction now routing instantly to a rival who, crucially, had a policy that mandated respect for every wallet, regardless of the wrapper. The grease, the labor, the decades of denial had all led to this calculated moment of absolute, unchallenged economic authority. A moment that had cost the dealership millions in 30 seconds. The roar of Jake's ancient pickup engine faded into the ambient hum of the showroom, leaving behind a vacuum of sound that felt heavier than a lead blanket. Mr. Sterling, the general manager, let out a forced, rattling chuckle, smoothing his silk tie. "Well, good riddance to that odor," he muttered, trying to regain the illusion of control. But the staff's previous laughter felt brittle and distant now, like something played through a broken speaker. They were starting to realize the mockery hadn't landed. It had merely been dismissed. Before anyone could fully settle back into their routines, Sterling's executive phoned a secure line used only for massive, high-priority sales alerts let out a sharp, insistent sequence of rapid pings. It was not the gentle chime of a pending deal. It was the alarm bell of a completed, seismic financial event. Sterling pulled it out, his face already draining of color. The initial notification was labeled simply, "Large volume transfer confirmation pending review." Sterling swore under his breath. He couldn't have actually done it that fast. The clown, the paperwork, the mechanic had mentioned the verifiable electronic transfer confirmation wasn't lying on the counter, neatly printed. Instead, a terse email from the corporate chief financial officer arrived seconds later, demanding immediate access to the digital proof Jake had forwarded directly to them. Jake hadn't used a piece of paper that could be crumpled and forgotten. He had used a secure link delivered straight to the top, ensuring maximum visibility of the transaction's failure. The gravity of the situation began to settle, pressing the air out of the room. Salesman Todd swallowed hard. The smirk finally wiped clean off his face, replaced by genuine dread. Sterling fumbled with the encrypted file, his hands trembling slightly, the polished screen reflecting his sudden, abject fear. When he finally succeeded, the glare of the illuminated bank statement hit the dealership floor like a harsh spotlight, freezing every person in place. It wasn't a simple invoice, it was a multi-page, meticulously structured corporate purchasing order. The figure that dominated the first page wasn't for the 12 mid-duty service trucks Sterling had grudgingly imagined. The sum listed was for 74 new vehicles, including specialized heavy-haul rigs and a full complement of integrated maintenance software licenses. This was the fleet renewal. They had heard whispers about months ago, the project they had scoffed at, assuming the local greasy garage owner couldn't possibly manage. They had underestimated the scale of the operation he commanded. Todd leaned closer, his eyes wide and burning, trying desperately to reconcile the astronomical number on the screen with the image of the grease-stained man who had just left. The total value, glowing crimson against the white background, wasn't just millions. It represented the largest single fleet acquisition in the state. The squatter, a cold, suffocating silence, descended, heavier than any noise. The sheer magnitude of the zero-sum transfer was the real punch to the gut. However, wasn't the number itself, but the originating account name. The funds weren't routed from a local checking account. The transfer confirmation showed the money coming from a JP Infrastructure Holdings, LLC, a high-net-worth holding company they had been trying and failing to court for a logistics contract for the past 18 months. They had dismissed the connection completely, unable or unwilling to link the multi-million-dollar corporate entity with the man in the worn overalls, whom they had consistently called the grease monkey behind his back. The realization hit them with physical force. The mechanic wasn't buying trucks for his own small shop. He owned the shop, the holding company, and effectively controlled the entire logistics chain for 3 of the region's key distribution centers. Jake's actual business wasn't just fixing things. He managed the efficiency, maintenance, and ultimate supply chain integrity for every truck on the road in a 3-county radius, making him the silent, single most influential fleet purchasing agent they could possibly encounter. The commission that had vanished in 30 seconds wasn't just a bonus. It was the dealership's profit margin for the next fiscal quarter. Sterling felt the floor shift under his perfectly shined shoes. His career, built over 20 years of carefully managed sales quotas, was dissolving into the ether of a single, catastrophic, self-inflicted error of judgment. He frantically snatched his personal cell phone, attempting to dial Jake's contact number. The one stored under the condescending label "pickup junk buyer." The call didn't ring through to a cell tower. Instead, it automatically routed to a polite, highly professional voicemail box belonging to the rival dealership's dedicated VIP account manager, Miss Ramirez, who cheerfully announced that her client was currently finalizing his new vehicle specifications. The finality of the move was breathtaking. It showed Jake hadn't just changed his mind. He had executed a precise, pre-planned maneuver designed to inflict maximum financial penalty for the disrespect shown. They scrolled further down the digital contract, eyes glued to the meticulous fine print. Jake hadn't just accepted the rival's offer, he had dictated terms. His purchase agreement included a specific, non-negotiable clause mandating professional, equitable, and respectful service at all stages of the transaction, a clause clearly lacking in their own failed interaction. Furthermore, the rival dealer had secured the transaction by offering Jake not only better pricing but a lucrative side deal, an exclusive 5-year maintenance contract for the entire new fleet, guaranteeing a massive, stable revenue stream for his existing repair shop business. Jake, the mechanic, had just ensured his financial stability for half a decade while costing Sterling his job. The staff members stared at the screen, understanding now that their arrogance had blinded them not to poverty, but to quiet, operationalized wealth, the kind that moves quickly and without fan. They noticed a subtle detail at the bottom of the purchase order. The final legal signatory, Arthur J. Peterson, 3, not Jake. The name was instantly recognizable to anyone versed in regional finance. It was the name tied to decades of old money infrastructure financing that had quietly underpinned the development of the entire industrial park down the road. The true identity of the man they had dismissed as mere manual labor settled upon them like a shroud of shame. The whispers and internal bickering erupted instantly. Todd desperately pointed a finger at Martha, the receptionist, accusing her of setting a poor initial tone. Martha, pale and sweating, immediately blamed Sterling for authorizing the discriminatory treatment. Before the verbal warfare could escalate, Sterling's secured executive phone pinged one last time, displaying an urgent, red-bordered, automated alert. It was a system flag from the corporate parent company, bypassing local management entirely, flagging the massive lost sale as a critical operational failure due to verifiable staff misconduct. The digital evidence Jake provided had already done its work. They recalled Jake's unnerving composure. He hadn't been angry or arrogant. He had simply been efficient. He hadn't been testing them for a potential sale. He had been testing them for a catastrophic failure. This finau disastrous visit was merely the formal confirmation that their dealership was institutionally incapable of meeting his basic requirement for respect. They looked up the timeline. The contract with the rival was fully executed 15 minutes ago. The paperwork also revealed that Jake had visited this dealership 3 times previously, conducting subtle, low-stakes interactions to gauge their service level, only to be dismissed and ridiculed each time. This was not impulsive revenge, it was calculated consequence. The entire local market balance was already shifting. The rival dealership, a smaller, hungrier operation, was undoubtedly celebrating the acquisition of the biggest fleet sale of the year. The contract held one final, crushing detail. Jake's purchase also included a 5-year exclusivity clause, preventing the rival dealership from supplying their primary competitor with the same model of heavy-haul truck, effectively crippling the local rival's ability to respond. Sterling stared blankly at the empty stretch of asphalt where Jake's battered pickup had been parked moments earlier. The air was thick with financial ruin. The quiet authority of the grease-stained man was absolute, and he had used his wealth not as a tool of oppression, but as a scalpel of surgical, devastating justice. The receipt confirmation held a final footnote. The penalty fee for early transaction cancellation was listed as $0. Because Jake had used the specific termination clause A had assured him smugly no serious buyer ever uses. Sterling's knuckles were white, clutching the heavy fob ring. 5 keys, each tagged with the ving of a brand new, top-tier heavy hauler, felt like 5 weights dragging him straight to the unemployment line. The silence in the glass-walled office was suffocating, broken only by the scratch of the pen confirming the wire transfer. He had watched that number $3.2 million disappear from Jake's holding account and land squarely in the dealership's bank. A victory that felt infinitely worse than any loss. The money was a fleeting comfort. The reputation damage was permanent. Jake's eyes, usually crinkled from sunlight and effort, were now clear, focused, and utterly merciless. He wasn't savoring the moment. He was simply concluding business. Sterling swallowed, the taste of cheap coffee and failure coating his tongue. He slid the laminated keyring across the mahogany desk, careful not to look into the grease-stained hands that reached for them. This wasn't a sale. It was a tribute paid to a superior, technical mind. He remembered laughing at Jake just a few months ago, calling his questions about engine maintenance cute. Now, those same maintenance requirements were locked into a contract that Jake, the master mechanic, would control entirely. The biggest sting. Sterling realized Jake hadn't even haggled on the price once, meaning the margin was huge, but the cost to Sterling's soul was higher. Jake took the keys. The weight felt right, the solid certainty of machines ready to work. He didn't inspect them. He knew they were pristine. He looked over the final printouts, the exclusivity clause, the non-compete rider, the full 5-year service contract all ironclad. He paused at the signature line for the general manager, noticing the slight tremor in Sterling's hurried scrawl. Jake had always respected craftsmanship, whether it was rebuilding an engine or building a successful business. He found neither here. He thought about the small rival dealership, rivet and rail, which had supplied him with all the specialized parts for his own fleet repairs over the years. They didn't know yet, but this purchase meant they were about to get a massive, silent infusion of capital through Jake's planned subleasing operations. "The paperwork is clean," Jake stated, his voice flat, devoid of triumph, which somehow made it sound heavier. "The transfer is confirmed. Ownership is immediate. You understand the implications of the service agreement, Sterling?" Sterling nodded stiffly. He understood that every single maintenance dollar for the next half-decade was tied to Jake's oversight. Removing a massive guaranteed revenue stream from this dealer's service center. It wasn't just the trucks they lost, it was the ecosystem around them. Sterling then remembered the GM, Mr. Vance, who was currently on a cruise, thinking he'd left the business in capable hands. The call he was about to receive would define the end of his vacation and perhaps his career. Jake leaned back, finally allowing a small measure of exhaustion to show, though quickly masked. He looked around the pristine, overly polished office, the chrome accents, the abstract art celebrating ambition, the untouched glass desks. It all screamed surface success, expensive but hollow. He contrasted it sharply with his own workshop floor, stained with oil, smelling of diesel and honest sweat, where real value was created day in and day out. That floor was where he learned the difference between looking rich and being resourceful. He realized he hadn't just bought 5 trucks. He had bought 5 years of leverage against the entire local heavy transport market, a position even his rivals didn't grasp yet. Sterling felt the inevitable moment approaching, the final verbal blow that Jake had earned the right to deliver. He waited, hands gripping the desk edge until his fingers ached. He wished Jake would just shout or gloat or celebrate with cheap champagne. The measured, quiet demeanor was far more terrifying. A faint memory surfaced. Jake had once asked about the long-term structural integrity of the truck frames, a question Sterling had dismissed as the ramblings of a paranoid amateur. Now, the answer to that structural flaw could cost Sterling's company millions if Jake chose to expose it. Jake stood up, the movement deliberate. He pushed the heavy oak chair back slightly. He placed the key ring carefully into the deep pocket of his worn denim jacket. He glanced at the framed, glossy picture of Sterling receiving a Salesman of the Year award, a man who prided himself on reading people and closing big deals. "You judged me?" Jake began, his voice dropping slightly, forcing Sterling to strain to hear the condemnation. "3 times? I came here looking for partnership, for fair service, for someone who knew the difference between a high-gloss finish and a true workhorse. You saw the stains on my shirt," Jay continued, gesturing vaguely towards his chest, "and you dismissed the bank balance behind them. You looked at my pickup, a truck I keep running with 40 years of specialized knowledge, and decided I wasn't worth your time. You decided that my appearance dictated my ability to execute. That's the folly of the whole operation here. Sterling, you sell expensive wrapping paper, but you don't understand what quality looks like underneath." He revealed that the $3, $2 million, was actually only 10% of the funds available. In the specific acquisition account he had set up 3 months prior, designed solely for purchasing capital assets. Jake paused, letting the scope of that financial revelation settle. He was rich not because he sold things, but because he fixed things consistently, efficiently. And for critical infrastructure clients who valued operational uptime over shiny sales pitches, he wasn't a flash in the pan. He was the bedrock of local logistics. "These 5 trucks," Jake said, gesturing to the lot through the panoramic window, where the 5 massive, newly acquired rigs sat awaiting their fate. "They represent my capacity to maintain control over my supply chain. They secure my contracts for the next decade, and they secure the certainty that I will never, ever have to rely on your incompetence again." The final, chilling thought. He had already secured a private, high-security storage lot miles away, not intending to use these trucks for hauling, but rather for detailed, perverse engineering of key components. He turned to the door. The transaction was over. The humiliation was sealed. He had come in seeking validation of his professional worth, and left having purchased the very means of his aggressor's downfall. He reached the heavy glass door, his hand pausing on the cool steel. Sterling found his voice, a raw, strangled sound. "Wait," What about the zero cancellation fee? Why was that clause even there? Jake turned back, his face expressionless. That clause, he explained, is the one they put in contracts for non-serious buyers who tie up inventory but can't secure financing. You told me it was a safety net for amateurs. Jake offered a slight, almost invisible tilt of the head. I used it because I knew the moment I signed, you would desperately want to undo the sale, realizing what you'd lost. But I also knew you wouldn't be able to because the money was real and the contract was ironclad. He didn't wait for a response. Jake pulled the door open, revealing the bright afternoon sun, and saw his old, faithful pickup truck waiting. There was a note tucked under the wiper, a job offer from a major competitor. Sent minutes after the wire transfer confirmation hit the public ledger. He stepped out of the air-conditioned mausoleum of broken promises and into the reality he had created. He walked past the 5 gleaming behemoths, machines now subservient to his vision, their keys warm in his pocket. Jake didn't look back at Sterling's office, but he felt the heavy, toxic stare of a man watching his life's work crumble. The message was delivered, the payment rendered, the contract fulfilled. The victory was silent, tactical, and complete. He climbed into his old pickup. The engine roared to life with the familiar, rough confidence of true durability. As he drove away, he checked his rearview mirror one last time and noticed a subtle detail. A drone, clearly professionally operated, hovering high above the dealership, documenting the entire fleet acquisition. This whole event was performance art, watched by interested parties. He pulled onto the main road, heading not towards his workshop, but towards Rivet and Rail, the small dealership he was about to silently finance. The true consequence of judging a book by its worn cover wasn't the loss of a sale, but the creation of an immovable, supremely well-funded competitor built on competence and integrity. The landscape of heavy machinery logistics had irrevocably changed in the span of 30 minutes. Jake felt the engine humming beneath him, the sound of tangible success, not empty promises. The 5 colossal machines he owned were already en route to their new home, the foundation of Rivet and Rail. Meanwhile, high above, the drone footage, titled The $5 Million Oversight, had already gone viral among industry investors, proving beyond doubt the sheer professional arrogance of Sterling's organization. Inside Sterling's soundproof office, the silence was shattered not by a roar, but by a phone call from corporate brief, brutal and final. He hadn't just lost a commission. He had publicly hemorrhaged millions by dismissing the one man who had the means and the motive to reshape the market. Sterling's career, built on slick suits and practiced disdain, evaporated in 30 minutes. Simultaneously, the laughing critics who had dismissed Jake as a sentimental fool watched their own platforms crash. Their analysis that true power resided only in established institutions was not just wrong, but catastrophically flawed. They learned painfully and immediately that the biggest mistake in business is not risking too much, but misjudging the quiet potential of a hungry rival built on sheer competence. Jake drove on unburdened by malice, merely executing efficiency. He knew the greatest fortunes are often lost not through bad investments, but through blind arrogance and the inability to recognize value outside the usual packaging. He proved that the dirt beneath the fingernails holds far more integrity than the polish on the window. When the powerful choose to see only the surface, they are often the first to drown in the depths below. Thank you for watching this story of true market disruption. If you enjoyed Jake's silent victory, please hit the like button, subscribe for more profound tales of transformation, and let us know your favorite moment in the comments below.